Hey, welcome back to the vlog. My name is Jacob again, and I'm still in Mexico City. A few things have happened since we last saw each other and since I first announced that I was starting this channel. First and foremost, I got really bad food poisoning just a few days ago, and it was the night before I had a big reservation to a restaurant called Pujol, which I had discovered on Chef's Table, and I just looked up, and I think it's now quoted as the 5th best restaurant in the world. And I like these kinds of really fun food experiences. I've done them a few times, and they're really exciting. There's something to look forward to. I got this reservation, I think, 2 to 3 months ago, and it was very ironic to have gone to bed that night, the night before, thinking, "Oh, I've made it. I've been in Mexico City 3 weeks now. I didn't get COVID. I didn't get the flu. I didn't end up with bad food poisoning, so I'm going to Pujol tomorrow." And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, realizing I did get food poisoning and Pujol was not going to happen. And there was a sense of surrender, both the feeling of being sick and having to feel that and having to really experience it, which is not pleasant, as you know, but also giving away this reservation, giving it to some friends and letting them take it instead, and not sitting with resentment or pain, but almost a sense of joy and relief in being able to give that away and being able to do that. And while it was disappointing in some ways, in some other ways, it actually felt like a relief. And it got me thinking that a lot of that relief and a lot of that release and a lot of that surrender to the food poisoning and to everything else is really a result of my meditation practice. Meditation has had a huge, profound impact on my life. I've been practicing now for 7.5 years, and I thought I'd share a little bit about what meditation has meant to me, why it's impacted my life in, I think, a very positive way, and maybe share some advice or some tips and places that you might want to check out, some resources for who you might want to check out if you're interested in learning more. I got into meditation and mindfulness and Buddhism for the first time by reaching out to a good friend of mine, Vito Ruiz. Vito and I grew up together since, I think, elementary school. We've been friends for a very long time. And 7.5 years ago, summer of 2015, I was heading on a trip to Greece. And I don't exactly know why, I can't remember why, but I reached out to Vito because I'd sensed such a sense of peace in him in our most recent interactions. I think we had just seen each other for a visit very briefly in Texas, and I thought, wow, he seems so at peace with himself, with the situations. He's able to roll with the punches, and I can feel a completely separate, different energy from him than I feel with most people that I interact with. And it feels more home for me. So I asked him pointedly, I said, I'm interested in learning a bit more about Buddhism and what it is that you practice and what meditation is. Can you give me a brief primer? And I think it was a very quick conversation. He gave me a quick history of the Buddha, a quick story about the Buddha's history in the past, how he decided to leave his home and experience the world and got to see the pain and the suffering in the world, that the pain that he had been protected from by his family. And he sort of embarked on a journey of self-discovery and understanding what he called the middle way. Extremely ascetic lifestyle was one way that he practiced, by depriving himself of all pleasure and joy and seeing if that provided any enlightenment or opening. After having experienced the complete delight and joy, and ultimately landed on what he called the middle way. It was a life of not complete ascetism, but not completely holding yourself back and not depriving yourself of everything, but also not completely giving in to every indulgence. And this middle way was what Vito was explaining to me. And again, that felt very interesting to me. And then he recommended a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi, which I read on my flight over to Greece. And that book opened up an interesting sort of curiosity in me about the meaning of consciousness and life, and opened up some big questions about how to live a life that's simple, but has true joy from the simplicity. Long story short, I read that book and I started my first ever meditation in Greece. I just sat down, I had no idea what to do. And that opened up some interesting new experiences and sensations, especially discomfort and boredom. And later moved into using Headspace, an app that I started to use a small timer and have some guided meditations that got me to a place of sort of knowing what I was doing and how to meditate. Eventually, I found a Sangha, or a community in LA called Insight LA, which was an opportunity for me to practice with other people in my community and in my city, And that, I think, really began a newfound journey for me of where Buddhism and meditation could take my life. So I think I've been rambling a little bit about the journey into meditation, but let me boil down what I think have been the three biggest lessons, the three biggest takeaways from my practice. The first one has been a sense of disconnecting my thoughts and my emotions that arise from reality. So often, especially as young people, we feel like if we have a feeling of depression, we are depressed. If we have a feeling of anger, we are angry. And those emotions and those thoughts, even thoughts, in my case, they were quite hurtful thoughts, like I am worthless, or I'm not enough, or I'm not handsome enough, or I'm not thin enough. Whatever these painful thoughts were, I felt they were reality. And I really came to believe the thoughts. And I think the first interesting insight that comes from meditation is this space, this sense of distance from the thoughts of the emotions that arise and what's reality, what's really happening. That distance is so healthy because you come to no longer associate with the thoughts. Instead, you see them as things. I think Headspace uses this sort of metaphor of clouds that come and go, that move through the sky. And once they move through, that blue sky is always there behind the clouds. As I'm looking up at clouds and a little sliver of blue sky up ahead. It's quite an apt metaphor. One of the best explanations that I got of this idea was about retreat practice. And the caveat is I've never done a retreat before. Meditation retreat is where you go for a weekend, for a week, for a month, for a year, where you practice. You have a very strict plan and an arrangement and an environment where you're focused exclusively on meditation. And that environment is set up in such a way where there's a lot of control and a lot of consistency in the schedule. You're waking up at the same time every day. You're going to practice at the same time every day. You're meditating the same number of times per day. You're eating meals at the same time per day. Even the meals themselves, I think, are quite similar day to day. So what you end up with is a very consistent environment. And what you're then left with are the only changes that you're truly experiencing are the changes in your mind. And that is so interesting because you might, within the course of a day or a week, feel torture, feel pain, feel elation, feel confusion, depression, sadness. And you're realizing that there's nothing about the environment or the outside world that's impacting or changing those emotions or those feelings or those thoughts. It's all coming from your own mind, the creation within your own mind. And that is a very healthy, again, that sense of space and separation to realize this isn't reality. This is simply my mind creating these things. And I don't have to believe all of them. And I can have a sense of space. And then I can start to notate and label that, oh, that's just depression coming around, or oh, that's just pain coming up, or that's just frustration, or that's anticipation or anxiety. These are things that are arising and coming. So that sense of space, I just wanted to kind of close the chapters. That's one of the most important first insights that I got from meditation was that first separation and disassociation from the emotions and thoughts. And that's been a very helpful and profound insight from meditation over the years. The second piece that I think has been, for me at least, probably the most important, has been this ability to remain steadfast with yourself, to become your best companion, your own best friend, to find home, a sense of home and peace within yourself. I've always turned to spending time alone, and I've turned to solitude quite a lot as a child as a way of self-soothing, as a method of feeling better. To be honest, I've used it quite a lot. So maybe it's something that felt quite at home for me already, but clearly meditation practice makes you spend a lot of time with yourself, with your own thoughts, and cultivating a sense of home within yourself. Thich Nhat, who's a teacher, I'll recommend him and send some links below, but Thich Nhat talks about how one of the paths to ending loneliness is to realize that home is within ourselves. The more we go inward, the more we realize and cultivate and take care of ourselves, the more we realize that this is really where home is. And that allows us to feel at home wherever we are in whatever situations we're in. So getting back to the food poisoning situation, even though the situation and scenario was quite bad and painful and uncomfortable, I felt really at home because I was with myself. And I know myself, and I know that I have the strength to get through this. And there was a level of peace. And even if I had to give up my Puyol reservation or whatever came my way, I realized I could get through it. and I was okay because I was home. I was with myself. Meditation practice has you spending a lot of time with yourself, with your own thoughts, getting to really become comfortable and familiar with who you are, with how your mind works, with what your habit energies are, what your addictions might be, what your favorite flavors of complaining or soothing might be. You might come to realize you have some really bad habits, and those are okay. You appreciate those and come to appreciate those with love and with acceptance. And so all in all, there are many teachers who talk about this sense of home. I just recently listened to a podcast between Jay Shetty and Trevor Noah. Jay Shetty describes home for him as being in touch with his purpose. And so long as he's living his purpose moment to moment, he's at home. He explains that his purpose is helping other people find their purpose. As long as he's doing that, he feels at home. Trevor Noah says that for him, being at home is being where he's familiar, where things feel familiar. That's home for him. I think both of these kind of point back to what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about. Like, if you're in touch with yourself, if you know yourself, if you're home with yourself, then you're living your true nature. You're in touch with what your true nature is, and that is familiar, and that is home. So again, the first big piece for meditation is that space, that separation between your thoughts, your emotions, and reality, not associating with those directly or believing them for what they are immediately. The second one is the sense of home and solitude and spending time with yourself and coming to really know yourself, love yourself, and embrace yourself and accept yourself. That's the second big piece. The third kind of big insight, and it's so simple, and it's something you probably hear all the time, probably the most of the time, is this sense of access to the present moment, an intense presence and awareness of being here right now. And it is difficult, and I will say that even though I meditate for 7.5 years, it's not like I'm walking through life in the present moment all the time. I'm often ruminating about the past. I'm often anxious about the future. What meditation does is allows me to have a tool to touch into the present moment more often than I would if I didn't have the practice. Often, what brings me to the present moment for whatever reason is nature. I've found that in my meditation group and with the people that I practice with and I've practiced with, I'm not alone. Nature tends to bring people to the present moment in a way that I think most other things don't. Maybe walking meditation, getting in sense with the sensory inputs like touch and temperature and other things might be another pathway. But nature seems to be a shortcut, a catalyst for me to jump into the present moment in a fast way. And that typically happens while I'm, say, walking and I just see a hummingbird fly past and I focus on the hummingbird and I see it. And I see it living its life and living its true nature and doing its thing. It's miraculous and it flies away. Or it's the observation of a water droplet that's just so beautiful, or a leaf that's so gorgeous, or the movement of the trees, or the beauty and colors of a flower. It's so many things. For whatever reason, nature brings me to the present moment. But it can be meditation practice, it can be any number of things. It doesn't matter. I'm just giving you the explanation, the idea that this zapping into the present moment is something else that meditation and mindfulness has brought me to. And there is such a level of peace about being able to truly live your life right now and experience the present moment, experience life. I've been reading Seneca the Elder, some Stoic philosophy, and Seneca talks about the importance of being in the present moment and living your life in the present moment. He says never to confuse the age of a man with how many years that person has actually lived. So a person might be 80 years old, but if they've spent their entire lives obsessed with their work and ruminating about the past or dreaming about the future and not ever really being here now, then that person has maybe lived less years or less time than someone who's 30 years old but has been living in the present moment for a lot longer. I think this idea of being in the present moment, you hear it with Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. You see this often. This idea is not new. But I'd say it's one thing to know about it and sort of understand it philosophically or theoretically, but to experience it and to experience it frequently gives you the ability to embrace life and truly be yourself. And so this, jumping into these videos and doing this is an example of just being very present and just being very much here and speaking from the heart and being in the present moment and being able to see the sky and the water tower and the lights outside here and the trees in front of me and everything else. It's about being present, and that presence is something else that I touch in with often. My teacher, I'd say he's one of my primary teachers that I've worked with, is a man named Colohan, who's a Korean Zen teacher. teaches from the Korean Zen tradition. And he has a quote that he uses often to describe meditation and mindfulness and mindful awareness. And I'm going to say it a couple of times here because each word matters. And Tim has mentioned this to me, that each word is so specific and has so much deep meaning within it. But the quote is this: resting in openness to the totality of present moment awareness. I'll say that again, that meditation or the practice is about resting in openness to the totality of present moment awareness. And as I break down each word there, you can get a sense of how much there is in not just each word, but in each moment. Resting is something that happens quite often in the practice, is this sense of surrender, similar to the surrender to the food poisoning or giving away of the reservation. But resting is about remaining relaxed and being okay with things as they are. So you rest in complete openness. Whatever comes, comes. There's a sense of you're open to taking it all in and not only looking at the positive or negative or the pleasant or unpleasant, but just being open. So resting in openness to the awareness. So being aware of everything, the awareness of the totality of everything that is, and everything that you can perceive, to the totality of present, being right now, moment awareness. So that moment by moment awareness is being aware to it, but moment by moment, because each moment comes and goes, and you've got to continue to stay present in each of those moments. So that gives me an interesting framework that I've worked with Tim, and Tim has opened my mind to so many things, and this is a rabbit hole because there's so many interesting paths that start to unfold in this mindful practice, in this meditation and path that I've been on. A very good friend of mine, Andy Wolf, and I have reflected quite a lot on this as well, about where the practice goes and where consciousness can unfold and how many other doors open on this path. But I thought that these three ideas are the framework, the base of what has become my meditation practice and my relationship with Buddhism. Again, I'll just recap them quickly. The first is not associating directly with emotions or thoughts as they arise. That sort of sense of distance is one of the most profound ideas that I experienced in meditation practice. The second is being at home with oneself, being at home with yourself and really truly coming to be okay with yourself, coming to know yourself, coming to almost clean up your mind and see what's in there and, clean it up, treat it like a nice house. Think about like how you would cultivate a nice home in a beautiful place and clean out the cobwebs and clean out the dirty old furniture and make it a place that feels like home, truly feels like home. And third is a sense of presence, of being here now, of really connecting with the present moment. That's something that's been incredibly interesting. In terms of beautiful teachers that I'd recommend, I highly recommend the book that I mentioned early on that Vito recommended to me, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi. I recommend the books of Jack Kornfield, specifically A Path with Heart and After the Ecstasy, The Laundry, two books that were incredibly impactful on me. A lot of the work of Pema Chodron. She has a wonderful series on Udemy on an idea called Shenpa, and I'll link to that as well as all of her books. So many of her books are just incredibly insightful and poignant, and you can read them 50 times, and each time you read them, there's something completely new that is more relevant than ever to your current life, which I think is amazing. I want to recommend the book and the work of Thich Nhat Hanh. The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching, I believe, is one of the books that I read that Tim recommended to me that was very simple and a great primer. But also a company called Sounds True has a wonderful free series by Thich Nhat Hanh that I'll also link to. They're just beautiful, wonderful teachings that are such a gift. There are so many teachers in this space. There are a lot of ways in, whether it's the Calm app or Sam Harris's app or Headspace or free online meditations or Insight Timer or any number of tools. I don't think there's really a wrong way in. For many people, meditation is not their thing. I'm not here to proselytize, but I do think that practice is incredibly helpful. It helps you remain steadfast in life, in the difficult moments. Again, not to sort of give the impression that I have no problems. I have a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotions that continue to come up and will continue to come up. But I think that meditation and mindfulness has given me such a tool set to be able to work with those difficult emotions, whether it's heartbreak or pain or loss or depression or doubt or any other number of things. So It was a bit of a ramble, but obviously I'm very passionate about this topic. I really hope this was helpful. And feel free to click on any of the links below. Subscribe if this was helpful to you. I think some of my next videos, I've been journaling a bit about what my next videos might be, by the way. And feel free to mention in the comments if any of these resonate with you. But I was thinking of talking about topics like what I've learned from other teachers, like Elizabeth Gilbert and Martha Beck and other recent, more contemporary teachers, Tim Ferriss, etc., people that I think have been very impactful in my life in the present. Maybe I'll talk a bit about psychedelics, magic mushrooms specifically, and how those impacted and changed my life in very profound ways over the years since I first started taking them. I think, I don't know, maybe close to 20 years ago. Maybe lessons that I've learned from therapy, from going to therapy. I started therapy in 2018. Maybe talking a bit about Mexico City. Maybe talking a bit about my meditation practice itself, the method that I use. There are many, many ideas and topics. Maybe getting over my most recent relationship and the heartbreak and the feelings that have come up, and maybe some of that journey. Many different topics that I'd love to talk about, and I'll continue to hopefully upload and create videos for you guys here. But anyway, I wanted to say thanks again. Have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.